Hey friends, I'm Steph from StephanieJenkins.com and CheapskateCook.com. We're gonna do a garden tour today. A little over a year ago, my family and I moved from a townhouse in the middle of suburbia to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. One of the big reasons why we moved was that I wanted to have a huge garden while the kids were still pretty young. Now, I am not a very experienced gardener. I mean, I've been gardening for over 10 years, but every year I feel like I am just trying stuff and seeing what sticks. We've lived in all kinds of places. I've had all kinds of gardens at each place. Even back when we were in like a little tiny studio apartment, I was still growing sprouts in our kitchen sink and we were eating them on sandwiches and stuff like that. That sounds grosser than it was. They were in a whole jar thing. It's not as gross as it sounds. Anyway, we're here in this big garden space. I had my first huge garden last year, very happy with the results, and we're gonna try it again this year, but a bit bigger. Every year we learn something new, and what I've discovered, especially gardening in a society where there's lots of food available at the store, I don't garden in order to save money. I garden in order to do something that is good for my body, good for the environment. We are outside, we're growing food locally, we are spending lots of time in the dirt. The food is more nutritious, and it's just a good overall grounding experience. So I'm gonna show you what we did and what I've learned from years past, and then hopefully throughout the summer, then I can give you some updates on how it's doing. I'm gonna be posting on Instagram and stuff like that, so you can see updates there. Anyway, let me show you the garden. Here is our garden before I planted anything in it. We decided to go with an in-ground garden because our neighbor has a tractor and he just tills up the garden for us every spring. It's really, really generous. So you can see here, we just take maybe a day, I think it was a day and a half, and take some strings and graph out the different rows and sections. These little piles that we're digging up were for the zucchini, and we've got cantaloupe and watermelon in a similar row. It took a little bit of work, but it really came together. I was really happy with it. I took last year's raised garden beds, and each of my big kids are in charge of one of them. So they researched and planted, and they are completely responsible for those. This helped kind of fit into our homeschooling and education, and also gave them a fun project. I mean, I don't know how fun they think it is, but it is a family project that we're doing. Within a week of planting all the seeds, we had some sprouts, which is always rewarding because every year I feel like this might be the year that nothing grows. But every year, stuff grows. Never the way that I expected, but it does grow. And a few weeks later, this is what we have. You can see weeds have taken over portions of it, but we are keeping them under control, and I'm honestly not too worried about the weeds as long as my plants are growing. They're not getting choked out. The weeds actually help create pathways that don't get super muddy after I've watered them. So I'm just embracing the weeds and taking care of these plants the best I can. This is still early summer, late spring produce, so I'm not getting cucumbers or tomatoes or anything yet, but we're getting lots of Swiss chard and radishes and herbs, and the zucchinis just started ripening. Every year I try to focus on something new that I'm learning, so this year I embraced companion planting. Even though we have rows of dedicated main vegetables, every section has multiple fruits and vegetables planted in it. And I just did quick Google searches for the main plants that I wanted to grow and found good companion plants for them. So the Swiss chard and the lettuce has radishes growing in it. The watermelon and the cantaloupe actually also has radishes. There are lots of flowers everywhere in the garden to help attract pollinators and just make the garden more pretty. Tomatoes have basil and parsley growing with them. With my corn, I planted dill. The beans have carrots and beets growing along with them. The cilantro I'm growing all by itself because it seemed to do well away from shaded plants. I've got a couple of volunteer tomato plants. I think because I threw my dead tomato plants last year into the garden. So I just put some tomato cages over them, and we're gonna see what happens. This is supposed to be my pumpkin patch. I'm supposed to plant them in a couple of weeks. I don't know what I'm doing over there. You can kind of see the hills that I'm supposed to plant the pumpkins on. I'll probably just try to weed those and see what happens. This is my tea garden. Currently it has a lemon balm plant that I pulled from a lemon balm plant I have in a pot. So I just want more of it, and it's doing great in the raised bed. And a peppermint plant that I got from a friend who has so much peppermint. So she just pulled up a portion of it, I plunked it into my garden bed, and we'll see what happens. Lemon balm and mint are supposed to grow pretty well together. They're both very invasive, kind of both things that you want to keep contained. So I'm hoping having them both in the same raised bed, they'll just take it over and stay there. The big new thing that I'm doing this year is a strawberry patch. So I have this raised bed. I planted just a few strawberry plants and they are going crazy. I don't know much about strawberries, so I won't try to pretend that I do. I'm just showing you what I'm doing that's new this year. We had a huge plumbing project that we had to do this year. While we were doing it, our plumbers offered to throw in a spigot next to the garden for free because the project was so big. So now we've got this cute little spigot that makes watering the garden super easy. I'm really, really thankful. Last year I was hauling the hose back and forth from the house. And up by the house, it's very, very shaded, so I have a few herbs in pots. This makes it easy to grab some herbs if I'm cooking, and they do really well up here, and they look really pretty, and they keep bugs away. We've got some chocolate mint, some thyme, chives, and 2 pots of parsley that are going to seed. I have some parsley planted in the big garden, so I'm just kind of letting this guy do what it's gonna do this year. I mean, altogether, it's a hot mess, but also it's a functioning hot mess. I think when we plant gardens, we have these ideas that it needs to be perfect or else we're a failure, but it really doesn't. As long as it's growing food, every year is different, every plant is different. I'm learning something every single year, and I'm enjoying it. It's kind of like low stakes homesteading. I mean, if it fails, it just means I wasted my time playing outside, which really is that much of a fail. Okay, that was our garden for this year. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Steph from StephanieJenkins.com and CheapskateCook.com, and I will see you next time.